wanted to is that's the bioregion that you live in, also known as Southern Appalachia, but we think of it as Katuah. And I'm happy to be back here in particular because it's a place I've found to be full of particularly astute and perspicacious people. Of course, I base that opinion on the fact that you all have invited me to speak here so very often over the last 20, 30 years. And I would wish I could bring to this happy Greenfest better news than I have. But I felt when I was thinking about this that there's no point in fooling around about where we are and what we have to do. And it takes nothing away from the events that you all have organized here. But it's, I think, important to put it in perspective. The sobering news that I would start off with, except it's not really no news because science and some people have known it for 40 years or more, is simply this. If large corporations and the nations that are their handmaidens continue on the course they are on now, the edifice we know as Western civilization will collapse, and much of the environment along with it. I would say within a matter of decades, although I am called a pessimist on that, so by the middle of the century at least. The causes will be multiple and synergistic. Environmental degradation, depletion of fresh water and topsoils, climate change, ozone radiation, rising sea levels, deforestation and desertification, overpopulation, exhaustion of oil and mineral resources, resurgent diseases, warfare and rebellion, unabated terrorism and crime, disintegration of nation states, worldwide depression and the meltdown of major currencies, biological and robotic technologies out of control. That's for starters. Lest you think me an alarmist, let me cite two reliable sources. The first is the statement of more than 100 Nobel laureates and members of the National Academies of Science around the globe that said that the present rates of environmental assault and population increase cannot continue without vast human misery and a planet so irretrievably mutilated that it will be unable to sustain life in the manner that we know. And that warning was issued in 1992, 18 years ago. And the fact is that not only has our assault on the earth not been slowed, it has markedly increased in those years. Scientists who make a study of this sort of thing may tell us that we're in real trouble. But politicians of all stripes and the corporate and financial interests that they serve have no intention of listening to that. Growth and despoliation is what they know about. And just 2 years ago, an additional scientific paper was issued saying the same things again, a further restudying by the scientific community of our assault on the planet. Echo vast human misery, irretrievably mutilated of that earlier report. The second source I bring to you is the United Nations World Water Report, issued to thundering silence every 2 years. In it, recently, UNESCO Director General Koichiro Matsuura says bluntly that of all the social and natural crises we humans face, the water crisis is the one that lies at the heart of our survival and that of our planet Earth. And yet, the report says, despite widely available evidence of the crisis, political commitment to reverse these trends has been lacking. Over the past 25 years, several targets have been set to improve water management, but hardly any have been met. And hardly any, I assure you, is UN speak for none. None of the targets that they have set has been met. The report adds, attitude and behavior problems lie at the heart of the crisis, inertia at leadership level, and a world population not fully aware of the scale of the problem. And that means we fail always to take the needed, timely, corrective actions. On this most critical issue of water, we fail. And that, mind you, is just one of the Earth's resources. Vital, but just one of them. If we do not pay attention to the loss of potable water, why should we pay attention to any of the other things that are being destroyed around us? Obviously we don't, and we will not as we are going, until it is too late. That's the hard truth. And there's no point in ignoring it. I think we have to start there. The next step is to realize that there is no possibility of correcting the path that we are on. No serious solution to these problems by reforming or regulating our way out of it, or passing laws, or treaties, or protocols. Forget reform. Forget Congress. Forget a Bush-like president, such as we now have. Forget the disunited nations. They are not going to make the kinds of serious changes that are necessary. Just look at the Kyoto Accords, which some in the environmental world hold up as a great beacon, and they blame the United States for not signing on to them. But the Kyoto Accords were failed at the beginning. They asked for a return to 1990 pollution standards, forgetting the fact that it was those pollution standards in 1990 that created the problem, destroying the atmosphere. And of course, the idea of getting back to there never took hold anywhere. And so you have subsequent international meetings that simply reaffirm the uselessness of it. And ultimately, so clearly shown in the failure at Pernod. For you freshmen out there, that's Copenhagen, correctly pronounced. Pernod. What a failure that was. What a joke that was. The systems and institutions in power in the United States and under the American empire elsewhere in the world are simply incapable of reform. They will not change. They have shown that they will not. And we can find no reason to convince them to, because they are too large in the first place. They're too large and complex and convoluted, extensive, too unwieldy